By our US correspondent Sherwin Bryce-pease, live from Washington. Good evening, Sherwin. Now, take us through today's sessions at the IMF meetings.
Well, just ignore the music in the background. There's a choir rehearsing for the afternoon lunch break here at the IMF World Bank meetings, Tabile. But very much a focus on Africa. And what you get from the IMF and World Bank hierarchy is the dearth of skills in the African continent, whether you're talking about West Africa, whether you're talking about East Africa, but particularly countries that have focused or have been dependent on commodities historically. And so what you heard there from the Vice President of the World Bank is this real need for African countries to invest in skills that can be used in the workforce, skills that will transform the labor market. And the point they're making, Tabile, is they're using examples of the current economic recovery that we're seeing globally. And they're pointing to economies in Europe, they're pointing to economies in Asia, and they're pointing to the economy of the United States that has come back faster than some economies in Africa due to the historical investment in education and skills that can be used in the labor market. The VP, they're making the point that we need an African populace. Remember, 50% of Africa's population is under the age of 25. This is the human capital that we need to be investing. Otherwise, Africa will get into trouble in terms of economic growth in the long term.
This recovery is powered by three important factors. One, capital inflows are back on the continent. In fact, we're seeing a regain in FDI. We're seeing a regain in sovereign bond issuance, and more importantly, we are seeing a narrowing down of sovereign bond spreads, right, which is signaling that there is a return in investors' confidence on the continent. Commodity prices that have actually driven down growth in 2016 are slightly recovering. They have stabilized at a lower level than in the past, but there is a slight uptick that is actually improving the conditions in our natural resource-led economies. And the third important factor that is driving the recovery is that our two giants, Nigeria and South Africa, who make more than 50% of our GDP, are out of the recession. They're still growing at only 1%. I'm not sure I should clap yet, but
as a South African, I think we need to clap.
Yes, we're out of recession.
My colleague Lerato Mbele hosting a session earlier on the skills revolution that is required in Africa, and the point there being made by the chief economist of the Africa division at of the World Bank is that the foreign direct investment that is returning to the continent, Tabile, is being directed at historical industries, for example, mining industries, and this is a long-term problem. This is why we use this word diversification of the economy, and this is a very fundamental issue, whether you're talking about energy-dependent economies like Nigeria or mineral-dependent economies like South Africa. We need to diversify the economy if we are going to be competitive globally. And that is the point he was making. The concern is that FDI is returning to the continent, and that's why you've seen South Africa and Nigeria emerge from a number of quarters of recession. But the concern in the long term is that we cannot just be attracting foreign direct investment into the mining industry. We need to be attracting foreign direct investment into other industries, but those industries are not as historically firm, or certainly there isn't a solid base for those investments yet, and that's why the emphasis here is on the restructuring of South Africa's economy and the restructuring of the other powerhouse in Africa, of Nigeria.
Sherwin, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for that update. Hopefully we'll catch up with you a little later. Live from Washington, that was our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-pease joining us from those IMF meetings.